Ladies and gents, welcome to the video. I'm GetGoodGuy, this is Battlefield 5. I'm going to talk a little bit less today, I think, make it a bit more brief and show a bit more gameplay afterwards to keep switching things up to try and find that magic formula to please you guys, so let me know what you think of it in the comments below. Today, we're talking about the God gun that nobody uses, and that does sound like clickbait, but I know, and trust me, some of you guys let me know regularly, but it is not clickbait. I called this gun the God gun back in 5.0, way back when. At that point, it became my absolute go-to weapon. I thought it was absolutely exceptional, but then it got butchered by the 5.2 update and still wasn't wonderful in the 5.2.2 update because DICE like to mess with things and like to mess with me and you and sensibilities of World War II, etc. But now the gun is back in full force, I promise you. And almost nobody uses it. But if you're out there saying, look, I see people use it all the time, because someone always says that when I say something isn't popular, you're just in a parallel universe and this video is somehow crossed over to you, okay? Because I play this game quite a lot and I never ever see this gun, pretty much. In fact, filming for this video, I noticed getting killed by it just one time. So yeah, it's not really used. And if you take anything away from this video today, it is me saying, please go and try this gun, take the time to get used to it and see if you like it, because it's so good. You guys know how much I love the AGM/42 and I prefer this. Genuinely, I've been talking about the AG and other guns. I've been saving this video for now once I got that out of the way, and this gun for me is better. I promise you, I think this gun is better, and this is my top choice now. So what you've been watching so far is me using the burst fire mode on it, and later, once the burst fire footage is done, we'll switch to the alternate fire, the semi-auto mode, to keep things nice and simple, keep them separate. Now, I did well with the burst fire, don't get me wrong, everything went really well, but I started to absolutely decimate once I switched to semi-auto. It's honestly ridiculously good on this weapon, so please stick around for that if you're interested. And I think this weapon not being very popular, and then when it's used, people not really using the semi-auto, is because it's an alternate fire mode, and people just don't think to try it, or possibly don't even know it's there. Most people don't really think of using the alternate fire mode on guns, and they see the default fire as being the main reason to use the gun. And I guess reasonably that is the case generally, but for me, not for this weapon. Now, I used the slow burst option on the left side of the tree, which is the one where the bullets come out faster in the burst, but the gaps between those bursts aren't shorter, if that makes sense. And I used the fast burst option, which is where the bullets in the burst are fired at the normal rate, but there's less time between all the bursts, so you can kind of make it into a full auto weapon if you keep tapping. And I ended up preferring the faster bursts on the right side of the spec tree, but both can be very good. It's going to come down to you and how you like to play. The right side of the tree, where you can go kind of full auto with it if you keep tapping, obviously makes it easier to get lots of rounds out, but you can't use light and stock, so you can't be as mobile and strafe as much, which is a bit of a shame, but that's where the balancing is. And then the left side, where there's more of a gap between the bursts, you can't put out a stream of bullets akin to an automatic, but you can use custom stock for better strafing. And I was doing some real damage with the burst that I didn't really expect. I was basically just doing it for the footage so I could show you the burst and the semi-auto, but I was surprised. The burst was really good in the right situation. I recommend it only really for close-ish range, at least on console, maybe on PC a bit further out because you can control the recoil more so. But for me, yeah, close-ish range for the burst, because you need to land a large percentage of your shots to make its selection worthwhile, and that burst is harder to manage, of course, at mid to long range. But the point is, you can kill in 4 shots to the body up to 30 meters, so 1 solid burst on an enemy and they're dead, which is great for holding down close quarters lanes and such like. It does then require 5 bullets after 30 meters, which makes the burst less reliable, of course, and a semi-auto weapon will beat it the majority of the time, especially for further ranges, because you're not going to be landing all of those bullets along the ranges with a burst anyway. But this can be a semi-auto rifle, as I said, and a really excellent one, by switching to that alternate fire mode. It maintains that 4 or 5 shot kill, and it feels like it has almost 0 recoil. Honestly, almost nothing. And again, this is on console. On PC, it's going to be literally like there's no recoil. It is one of the absolute easiest guns I've ever used in any FPS game ever in my life ever. So what I'll do is put side to side AGM/42 on the left and the Breda on the right, and you can see what my recoil control is like on both of them. I think you should be able to tell that my recoil control isn't worse with the Breda. In fact, if anything, it looks like I find the Breda a little easier to manage, although that's not scientific and could just be me, but when I'm playing, the Breda really does feel easier for me to control. I don't know if that's placebo or what, but it works for me. And I won't bore you with lots of footage like that, but I'll tell you that I then went and stood much further back, and again found the Breda easier to handle, hitting the same spot. As for rate of fire, in another very unscientific test, test, I found that when firing both weapons as fast as I could in full auto, I output all 11 rounds from the AG in pretty much exactly the same amount of time as I output 11 rounds out of the Breda. And I went through that frame by frame in my editing software, so the Breda can hang as a fast-firing semi-auto, as the AGM/42 fires at 450 rounds per minute, and I actually feel like I get less missed inputs with the Breda. Again, can't prove any of that, but that's my experience. Plus, the Breda has 20 rounds in the magazine, whereas the AGM/42 only has 10 or 11. Now, the Breda isn't going to be quite the counter sniper that the AG is, due to a little bit lower damage, but it can still do it. It's still very much viable at pretty much any range I tried to use it from, and overall, I now just find the Breda easier to use in most situations than any of the designated semi-autos, which is a big deal. Now, some of you may ask, well, why not use the M1A1 then, as that's also 450 rounds per minute? Well, the M1A1 is less stable. It then requires recoil buffer to improve that stability, which means that you can't then take quick aim, which I tried to take on a huge amount of weapons in this game, including the Breda, so I can react to a gunfight more quickly. The M1A1 then only has 16 rounds to utilize, whereas the Breda has 20, unless you take extended mag for 31 on the M1A1, which means you then can't use light and stock for increased mobility and better strafing. It just feels clunky to me. For me, it's easily worse than both the AGM/42 and the Breda, even though it can 4-shot 20 meters further out than the Breda, because I feel like I miss more shots with the M1A1. I have full confidence firing as fast as I can at almost all ranges with the Breda. I can't say the same about the M1A1, and I can be more mobile with the Breda. And that's because, this is what I recommend, if you want to go semi-auto only, ignoring the burst, I recommend the left side so you can use light and stock for better strafing, but the choice is yours, and if you're going to use burst and semi-auto, then just pick the side that works best for you. And so that is why the Breda is the god gun that nobody uses, and honestly, it's my best gun in the game now, and I just can't see that changing. Please, please go and try it out. It will be exceptional for some of you, and those of you that don't like it, you can just go back to using whatever you prefer afterwards. At least you gave it a try, and you might learn how to counter Breda users as well by finding out what it's good and bad at. I will now play out the rest of my footage for the remainder of the video. If you want to stick around for that, then awesome. If not, thank you so much for joining me today. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, leaving a like for me is absolutely huge. I appreciate it so much. It really helps the channel to grow. If you're new here, please do consider subscribing and turning on notifications to stay up to date with my massive amount of content coming out at the minute. And all the links to my social media, including Patreon, can be found in the description and my pinned comment. Here is the Board of Awesome for the epic people who already support me on Patreon. They're all absolute heroes, and I love them all deeply and of course, often. If you want to join them on the Board of Awesome, the link to the Patreon page is in the description and my pinned comment. And with that all said, I'm GetGoodGuy, and I'll see you next time. Laters.
Capture the objective!
We have now taken objective Able.
Come on, capture the objective!
No, we have lost objective Bravo.
Appreciate it.
So you're kind of screwed over again if one gets anywhere near you, or just, snipes you from afar. And tanks are much better at picking people off from afar than sniper rifles sometimes at the minute. And so this brings us back to just the overall balancing. Despite some extremely good snipers utilizing them well,